At 21:30 hours, on the 23rd of October 1942, the Egyptian desert is unnervingly silent. The moon is full, casting long, pale shadows across a stretch of sand just 60 miles west of Alexandria. To the naked eye, nothing is moving. The heat of the day has dissipated, leaving a dry chill in the air. On the German side of the line, sentries from the Afrika Korps are peering into the darkness, confident in their defensive line. They believe they are facing a disorganized British 8th Army, a force they have beaten repeatedly over the last 2 years. They believe the British are weak, demoralized, and miles away from mounting a serious offensive. They are wrong. They are staring at a mirage, hidden in the shallow depressions of the desert floor. Under camouflaged nets that look like supply trucks are over 1,000 Allied tanks, and behind them, 195,000 men are checking their watches. They are waiting for a signal that will unleash the greatest artillery barrage since the trenches of World War I. This is the second battle of El Alamein, and the stakes are nothing less than the carotid artery of the British Empire, the Suez Canal, and the vast oil fields of the Middle East. If the British lose here, the panzer divisions will roll into Cairo, cut the empire in half, and link up with German forces in Russia. The war will effectively be over, but the man commanding the British forces, Lieutenant General Bernard Montgomery, has brought something new to the Desert War. He hasn't just brought more tanks, he has brought a magician. For the past month, the British have executed Operation Bertram, a masterpiece of deception. They built a fake army in the south. They constructed a fake water pipeline out of old fuel cans, digging trenches and laying dummy pipes to convince German reconnaissance planes that the attack would come weeks later and from the wrong direction. They built 2,000 sun shields canvas covers that make a 30-ton tank look like a harmless 3-ton supply truck. The Germans are looking south. The hammer is poised in the north. At 21:40 hours, the silence is murdered. 882 artillery guns open fire simultaneously. The sound is not a roar. It is a physical blow to the chest. The sky over the desert catches fire. For the next 20 minutes, a continuous wave of high explosives pounds the German positions. The vibrations are so intense that the needles on the compasses of the waiting tanks spin wildly. The German communication lines are severed instantly. Their command bunkers are turned into dust. General Georg Stumme, commanding the Axis forces in the absence of Erwin Rommel, who is recovering from illness in a hospital in Austria, drives out to the front to see what is happening. He suffers a heart attack in the chaos and falls from his vehicle, dead. In the first hour of the battle, the German army is headless, but artillery alone cannot win this fight. The British infantry has to walk into hell. Between the British lines and the German panzers lies the Devil's Gardens. This is Field Marshal Rommel's masterpiece. It is 5 miles deep. It contains 500,000 mines. These aren't just standard anti-tank mines. They are mixed with bouncing Betty's S mines that, when triggered, launch into the air to waist height before detonating, filling the air with steel ball bearings. The garden is laced with tripwires and aerial bombs buried nose up. Rommel's strategy is simple. Force the British to clear a path by hand, slow them down, and then destroy them with his 88mm anti-tank guns while they are stuck in the kill zone. At 22 hours, the infantry of the 51st Highland Division steps off the start line. Bagpipes are playing Highland Laddie amidst the explosions. Their job is suicidal. Walk into the minefield and clear 2 corridors for the tanks. They are using bayonets to probe the sand. Behind them come the Scorpion's modified Matilda tanks fitted with spinning flails of heavy chain. The chains beat the sand, detonating the mines. The noise is deafening. A mechanical scream of metal on metal. Dust choking the engines. But the Devil's Garden is deeper than intelligence predicted. The Scorpions overheat and break down. The dust cloud becomes so thick that the tank drivers are blind. The neat lines on Montgomery's map turn into a chaotic traffic jam. By dawn on October 24th, the British armour is not in the open desert as planned. They are stuck in the minefield. bumper to bumper. Perfect targets for the German gunners. This is the moment where the battle should have been lost. In previous years, the British commanders would have panicked and retreated. But Montgomery is a different breed. He orders the attack to continue. Crumbling, he calls it, a brutal, methodical grinding down of the enemy. On October 25th, Erwin Rommel rushes back from Germany, defying his doctors. He arrives to find a disaster. His fuel reserves are critically low thanks to the Royal Navy and the RAF sinking his supply tankers in the Mediterranean. He has enough fuel for maybe 3 days of mobile warfare. He looks at the map and realizes he has been duped. The main attack is in the north, not the south. He throws his panzers into a counterattack, trying to push the British back into the minefields. This leads to the technological clash that defines the battle. The Sherman versus the Panzer IV. For the first time, the British have a tank that can fight the Germans on equal terms. The American-made M4 Shermans have arrived. They are reliable. They have a turret that rotates quickly, and their 75mm gun can fire a high-explosive shell that terrifies the German infantry. But the Germans have the 88mm flak gun, an anti-aircraft weapon turned tank killer. It can slice through a Sherman from 2,000 yards away. The battle becomes a slugfest at Sniper's Hill, Kidney Ridge. It is a duel of physics. The German 88mm shells travel at supersonic speeds. You are dead before you hear the report. The British tankers are fighting with the hatches open to see through the dust, exposing themselves to shrapnel. Burning tanks litter the desert, casting black plumes of oily smoke that merge into a permanent artificial twilight. Rommel is fighting a brilliant defensive battle, shifting his limited armor to plug the gaps. But he is fighting the math of attrition. For every tank he loses, he has 0 replacements. For every tank Montgomery loses, another one rolls off the ship in Alexandria. The British Desert Air Force is unrelenting, bombing the German supply columns 24 hours a day. Rommel writes to his wife, "The dead are lucky. It is over for them." By November 1st, the stalemate is breaking the 8th Army. The casualty lists are horrific. The tanks are not breaking through. Montgomery retires to his caravan to think. He studies the map. He realizes that Rommel has moved his last reserves, the Italian Ariete Division and the German 90th Light, to the coast to stop the Australian infantry. This has left a seam a weak point between the German and Italian units further inland. Montgomery decides to gamble everything on one final thrust. He calls it Operation Supercharge. At 1:05 hours on November 2nd, the British artillery opens up again. This time, 360 guns focus on a tiny frontage of just 4,000 yards. It is a needle of fire aimed at the heart of the Axis line. The infantry goes in, followed by the 9th Armoured Brigade. Their orders are chilling. You must crash through the gun line. You will accept 100% casualties if necessary. The charge of the 9th Armoured Brigade is one of the most tragic and heroic moments of the war. They charge directly into the German anti-tank screen at Tel El Akakia. They are silhouetted by the rising sun behind them. Perfect targets. The German gunners cannot miss. In 30 minutes, 70 of the 94 British tanks are destroyed. The brigade is wiped out, but their sacrifice is the key that unlocks the door. By forcing the German guns to reveal themselves and expend their ammunition, they have cleared the way for the 1st Armoured Division behind them. At 9 hours on November 2nd, the final tank battle begins. It is the largest tank battle in North African history. 120 German and Italian tanks face off against 300 British tanks. The dust is so thick that tanks are firing at muzzle flashes blindly. But the physics of logistics finally catches up with the Desert Fox. Rommel's tanks are running dry. The Panzer IVs are maneuvering on fumes. A tank without fuel is just a pillbox. One by one, the German tanks stop moving. The Shermans, flush with American supplies, flank them. The Italian tanks, the M13 42nds, are hopelessly outclassed. Their rivets pop when hit by machine gun fire, turning the inside of the tank into a blender of shrapnel. The Ariete Division fights to the last man, radioing a final message. Enemy tanks broke through south of Ariete. Ariete thus encircled. Ariete keeps fighting. And then, silence. At 15:30 hours on November 2nd, Rommel knows it is over. His line is shattered. He has 35 tanks left. The British have 600. He sends a message to Hitler, requesting permission to withdraw to a defensive line at Fuka. To stay is suicide. To retreat is the only way to save the Afrika Korps to fight another day. The response from Berlin arrives on November 3rd. It is a delusional order that ignores all laws of military reality. Hitler messages, to Field Marshal Rommel, in your situation, there can be no other thought but to stand fast, yield not a yard of ground, and throw every gun and every man into the battle. As to your troops, you can show them no other road than that to victory or death. Rommel is stunned. He is a soldier who respects orders, but he is also a realist. He looks at his men. They are emaciated, covered in desert sores, drinking radiator water, and fighting with captured ammunition. To obey Hitler is to murder them. For 24 hours, he hesitates, trying to hold the line. The British surge forward, capturing the commander of the Afrika Korps, General von Thoma, at the front. Finally, on November 4th, Rommel breaks. He chooses his men over his dictator. He orders the retreat. But it isn't a retreat. It is a rout. The coastal road becomes a graveyard. The Desert Air Force pounces on the fleeing columns. Miles of trucks, tanks, and artillery pieces are strafed and bombed. The wreckage stretches for 60 miles. The Italians, who have no trucks, are left behind to walk across the desert. Thousands surrender, holding up photos of their families to the passing British tanks, begging for water. The math of the victory is staggering. The Axis suffers 37,000 casualties and 30,000 prisoners. They lose 500 tanks. The British 8th Army has taken heavy losses, 13,500 men, but they have achieved the impossible. They have broken the back of the Axis in Africa. The strategic significance of El Alamein cannot be overstated. By holding the line, the British denied Hitler the oil of the Middle East. Without that oil, the Luftwaffe and the panzers in Russia would eventually starve. They secured the Suez Canal, keeping the lifeline to India and Australia open. But more importantly, they destroyed the myth of German invincibility. For 3 years, the world watched the Wehrmacht crush everything in its path. At Alamein, the tide stopped. Winston Churchill, a man who knew the value of a good phrase, summed it up perfectly. Now, this is not the end. It is not even the beginning of the end. But it is, perhaps, the end of the beginning. Before Alamein, the Allies never had a victory. After Alamein, they never had a defeat. The battle proved that the German war machine, for all its tactical brilliance and superior engineering, could be defeated by better logistics, superior intelligence, and the sheer grit of an army that refused to back down. It proved that in the desert, water and fuel are more lethal weapons than the gun. Rommel, the genius tactician, was beaten not just by Montgomery, but by the stretched supply lines and the sinking tankers in the Mediterranean. As the sun sets on November 5th, the British tanks roll past the wreckage of the Panzer Army Africa. The road to the west is open. They will not stop until they reach Tunisia and eventually Italy. The Desert War is effectively decided. The sand, once churned by the tracks of 1,000 tanks, begins to settle over the dead, claiming them for the history books. So, what do you think? Was Montgomery a military genius for his crumbling tactic? Or did he simply win because he had more tanks and fuel than Rommel? Could Rommel have won if his supply lines hadn't been strangled? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown of the turning point in the desert, smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the battles that shaped our world.